Welcome to Healthcare Blind Spots. It is my honor to host Dr. Michael Marin, who is the surgeon-in-chief at Mount Sinai Health Systems in New York. He's played a pivotal role in establishing the Kyabirwa Surgical Center in Uganda, Ginger to be specific, and he recognizes the disparity there is in surgical care and access to surgical care, and he continues to do a lot of work. I mean, I cannot do justice to his portfolio. It is huge. So I'd like to invite Dr. Marin to, first of all, welcome to the show.
Thank you for the invitation. It's a pleasure and an honor to be here.
Yes, it's an honor to have you here, but let's start by just learning from you. What exactly do you do? How long have you been doing this? And how long have you been in surgical care in the field?
So I have a number of different roles that I participate in. As one, I'm the surgeon-in-chief, as you mentioned, for the Mount Sinai Health System, which means I oversee our surgical staff throughout our 7 hospitals in the New York metropolitan area. This gives me a chance to work very closely with surgeons in many different specialties and help organize both the clinical mission, the educational mission, and also our research mission to look at how we could improve surgical activities. In addition to this, I'm also a practicing surgeon. My specialty is in the field of vascular surgery, and vascular surgery involves the care and treatment of patients who have problems with arteries which carry blood around our body. And within that area, I specialize, perhaps we could call it a subspecialization, in the area of the treatment of aneurysms, specifically aortic aneurysms. Aneurysms are those vascular problems whereby an artery grows and enlarges in size, and as it enlarges, the wall thins out, potentially developing a crack or a break in it, resulting in internal bleeding, which can be a life-threatening problem. And I spend my clinical work repairing and replacing those arteries to prevent people from having these ruptures or disruptions of the artery. My third interest is in the area of global health and as you mentioned, in the area of disparities. And I've been charged with or interested in developing programs that can actually move the needle forward in a different way. I'll say at the outset, I'm not a big advocate of missionary programs where doctors or surgeons go to sites for short periods of time, perform some operations and come back. But rather, I'm interested in doing something that can impact on the 5 billion people on this planet who don't have access to surgical care. And impacting on that really requires us with coming up with plans that have durability, that build in-country programs that can actually stay and continue to service those communities in a safe and an effective way. So my focus in the global health area has been coming up with programs driven around that.
Well, it shows from the work that some of us we've come to learn about, and that's one of the reasons we're here today to talk about one of the programs that you initiated, which was the building of Kyabirwa Surgical Center in Uganda. Maybe to take us before we even get into the process of how it came about, what drove you to identify, first of all, Uganda as one of the places that you could build infrastructure for surgical care?
That's a good and a complex question with a somewhat of a long answer. It starts with this number I mentioned a moment ago, the 5 billion people. So that if we look at that number, it's an overwhelming number from the standpoint that most people on our planet can't obtain safe and affordable surgical care. So you could say from that alone, if we took one of those globes that we all had as children on our desks, or many of us did, and you spin that globe and throw a dart at it, as long as it hits land, the likelihood is you're going to hit a place that is in need of services associated with surgical care. So frankly speaking, we could have been anywhere at the time. A lot of my decisions and directions I choose are practical things, and I'm a practical person. It comes along with being a surgeon to some degree. So in essence, to build a program like this, the vision of it was already there. What I needed to put together to make it happen was money. And I had a donor who came along who said, I'm interested in in supporting and building a program in Africa. Now, if I could be perfectly frank with you, if she said to me, I want to do some things in the Philippines or I want to be in South America or so, I would have graciously accepted the support and built that program there. So the opportunity to develop this in Africa, which personally is a great and important location to develop this, was fortuitous on the basis of a donor coming forward and willing to help support such a project.
Mhm.
As it relates to the continent and choosing Uganda, also a practical thinking. At the time we built this, we were dealing with an Ebola epidemic on the on the West African coast. And if we built our program in many needy places in West Africa, we might have been consumed by the needs associated with that epidemic, which was very important, but at the same time would not have allowed us to test and try to build this program around surgical care for 5 billion people. So we moved away from West Africa and eventually migrated to the east portion of Africa, purely on the fact that there was a more stable environment. And Uganda became a country which is one of the poorest in the world. It's 2 or 3 from the bottom of GDP. So there's need there. It was very receptive to the government, and the healthcare administration were very receptive to the ideas that we had. So it became a logical location, and it turned out to be extremely favorable place to develop this.
That's an excellent background story to this. And now we're going to dive right into this surgical center. What was your vision for it? And, what was the process for actually built, first of all, identifying the land and deciding, okay, this is where it's going to be built and this is what it should look like?
So I guess the overarching vision that I'd love to sort of stick with, and I don't believe I'm the first to say this, maybe I am, but I think the concept, we were not looking for access. Access alone does not provide equity. Providing equity in healthcare is not just by saying, gee whiz, we'll build an operating room here in this hospital, and then because we've created access, equal high quality care will evolve. In order to get equity, we needed to develop something, and this is at the basis of everything we do at Kyabirwa. We needed to develop quality clinical services. That creates equity, not access alone. So we weren't just interested in building a hospital that could do surgery. We wanted to build a hospital that could provide the quality of surgery that you could get anyplace else in the world, so that would create the equity that we are interested in accomplishing in this program. So at the basis, that was the starting point. So to accomplish that, everything else had to follow suit with that. We're not, oh, well, we'll build this and they'll have something, so that's good enough. Good enough has never been allowed in the vernacular of what we've been building. It has to be high quality and at the top of the game, or don't do it. That has been our motto. So the beginning of this began with finding a piece of land in a place of need. Many people said, gee whiz, you should build something like this in the city. Go to Kampala, do it in the city. And as we started to look at the problem, a good percentage, if not majority of people, don't live in the city. What's more, the people who don't live in the city, who live in the rural communities, are the ones that can't get access to care, because if they try to travel to the city, it's not open to them, or they have to disrupt their lives in such a meaningful way that drives them away from seeking the care, and then the suffering and the loss of life occurs purely because of that access and equity issue. So that drove us to say, let's choose a rural community. At the same time that we were doing this, I'm a practical person, as I say. Surgeons tend to be practical, as you will come to understand. And I realized you can't take on everything. You can't say, I'm going to build a facility that does surgery, and and also we're going to take care of HIV, and we're going to take care of heart failure and tuberculosis and malaria and child care and maternity care. If you take on all of these things at once and try to create something, you're destined to fail. You have to keep a sense of focus. So one of the things about surgical care is you can't have surgery without these other support elements. So I chose a rural community that already had a functioning NGO that was providing medical care, but couldn't supply these other forms of care. So we had the ability to form partnerships with primary care and secondary care medical services and maternity care services in a community so that we wouldn't be placed in a situation where someone had malaria, but we don't treat that, so go away. There would be a facility present not related to us that could supply those care. And that brought us to the Kyabirwa village, which had all of the other points checked. It was a growing, developing community. It was a rural village that needed these kinds of care. It had primary care services available through NGOs in the community, but it had no access to the surgery that we could provide. So we could build and create expertise in an area that was specialized.
No, that is very important to understand, for us to understand and to hear from you, because what I heard is, going through this user journey, for lack of a better word, the design thinking process to say, okay, there is this whole problem and there is this whole journey, and where in the journey is this intervention going to be, and what is the intervention going to be? And it narrowed down to the surgical center, which is excellent. And it's important for us, I guess, everyone in global health, when I think of Paul Farmer, the approach to care, the approach to interventions is looking at, how we are providing sustainable solutions for any community. And I mean, I guess I'll first take us back to the very specific surgical center. What are some of the specific surgeries that can be performed at Kyabirwa? And what's some of the equipment that is in that surgical center, and what cases can they manage and what can they not manage?
That's an important question, and it relates back to your first question, which I don't think I fully answered, and that was some of the constructural things. Well, how do we construct this facility, and why did we do it the way we did? Being practical again in the thinking, you can't have a surgical center that can provide quality care without electricity. Electricity, while in some parts of the world we take that for granted, we turn on a switch and power is there, that needs to be the state of affairs in a facility that's going to supply surgery. Unlike medicine, which could be supplied with a stethoscope and maybe a flashlight, and you can actually see patients, diagnose them, and examine them, surgery requires equipment that needs power. We need light. We need ventilation and cleanliness of things in such a fashion that the sustainable program that can provide quality surgical care has to have a stable form of electricity. So it's step one, we develop that. And one of the things you can rely on with great certainty in sub-Saharan Africa is you're sitting on the equator. The sun is an enormous source of energy, and converting that using solar-based power became intuitively obvious. So we designed and built a program that can create 24/7, all the time, without interruption, electrical resource. And that was effectively designed and built into the program. Likewise, you need water, and you need healthy, clean, and drinkable water. And whilst there are some challenges with achieving that in some areas, developing programs that can harvest rainwater, which is quite rich in this area, store it effectively, and then have systems that are readily available to purify and render potable water became a second important feature which we were able to accomplish. Another important function of this build was to develop a communication line. We needed to, in order to create one of the important parts of our model, we needed to be able to take this center, which sit in this wonderful rural village on the Nile River, and communicate effectively and dynamically with centers all over the world so that knowledge could be shared. So we needed to create an internet connection, and we're able to accomplish that by a partnership with RENU, Research Education Network of Uganda, which is a in-country fixed enterprise, and the placement of an underground fiber optic cable between the main trunk coming in across the central portions of Africa and our village. And surprisingly, these things weren't difficult to accomplish. So once we had power, once we had water, and once we had a way of establishing a communication, building the facility in the context of the way buildings are built in this community and have been for thousands of years using locally made bricks fired through local individuals and building the facility around that, we had now had a structurally sound and operationally effective facility. We then went about selecting the equipment, as you described, that populates this place in a very careful manner. One of the advantages I have of having been a practicing surgeon now for almost 30 years, I've had a chance to really appreciate what we need in an operating room and what we don't need, what we kind of like to have in the operating room and what we need. And those are very different things. Focusing on need to provide excellence is where we are, not buying extraneous things that don't supply meaningful advancement in the field. The second thing we did is we did not accept donations of expired equipment. It's very common for countries to use a piece of operative room equipment up to its expiration life according to the manufacturer and say, oh, we'll send this to South America, we'll send this to someone in the African continent, they'll be grateful to get. That's nonsense. Sending expired equipment that can just not be serviced, first of all, and is at end of life, is causing just a waste of time and a compromise to quality. So everything we did, we carefully selected things, we chose equipment which was appropriate for the community, and we bought it new. And long-term, that ends up delivering the quality we need. Let me give you an example. There are dozens of different companies that make anesthesia machines, and anesthesia is a central part of surgery. If you can't provide anesthesia for pain control, you can't do surgery. So that equipment is important. There happens to be a machine made by a company that is designed for facilities like this. In other words, instead of being like most anesthesia machines that require an extrinsic source of oxygen, in other words, tanked oxygen to be brought to the machine, which may not be available in off-the-road kind of locations like ours, this machine has the ability to not only deliver anesthetic gases and anesthesia in a safe and effective fashion, but it also has the ability to concentrate and make oxygen in a concentrated form from the atmosphere. So it takes breathable air, sorts out all the gases that are inside there and takes out just the oxygen and places it in a tank so it can be delivered in its form, both pure and diluted as needed to the patient. So you don't need an extrinsic source of oxygen. Doing those kinds of careful selection of equipment was essential to be able to provide access and equity. And equity comes with quality clinical services.
First of all, I am so humbled by everything that you have said regarding the quality of equipment, the quality of infrastructure that you provided. And I think this is a message that needs to be amplified, because we've heard it over and over again, where equipment that is no longer needed is discarded into the poor countries or poor communities. And I think that is not it's all over. I hear it a lot in our communities. And what you're doing is noble, because it promotes the dignity of everyone who is going to be a user for this facility. So thank you on behalf of Uganda, on behalf of humanity, for championing that, for that principle. We don't take it lightly. And then in terms of again, equipment, in the context of equipment, so even we know that technology is evolving. So what measures were in place to make sure that if, for example, you have, the surgical center has one installation, that it will be compatible with even more modern equipment as it comes? And what is what's the model for sustainability of, the operating rooms as technology evolves? And in the same context, I know that you have provided virtual training facilities for these for some of the for learning purposes. Can you take us through that as well?
So you're spot on in that medicine and surgery is evolving. And to say we're going to do this treatment and think we're done and we can go, wash our hands and finish is inappropriate and is irresponsible. So we must constantly be questioning ourselves and being knowledgeable by reading and by being informed by the surgical and medical community as to what represents the best form of care. Remember, the motto we have is that, access alone doesn't equal equity. You need to get quality services. And to get those quality services, you need to be able to deliver technology and therapies that represent the best of what is known. Let me give you an example. So we know that, and this is something that's happening as we speak right now, we know that technology has evolved that we can now take care of some forms of tumors, cancers, by using a technique called ablation. And what ablation does is it allows you to insert a device into the middle of the tumor. And once it's placed into the tumor, guided by ultrasound or X-ray or sound wave images, once the probe, as it's called, the device is placed into the middle of the tumor, and you've confirmed that, you can deliver an energy in the form of radio frequency energy that sends out energy into the tumor and ablates it or destroys it. It can destroy the tumor without having to operate upon it and excise it. Let me give you an example of how powerful this can be. Right now, if you had a tumor in your liver, in one side of your liver, one treatment of that would be to remove part of your liver, which is a very successful way of taking care of that tumor. But on a realistic level, it requires resources, blood products, and other equipment and technical skills on the part of the surgeon, which may take years to accomplish. And it may not be practical to apply in this community. So not knowing about these newer techniques, which allow us to take care of that same tumor, and now data has shown with equal efficacy by using these minimally invasive techniques to place the probe inside of the tumor to deliver that energy, becomes the standard of practice and the way we should be doing things. So we've acquired that machine. It is now available in Uganda, and we're now having a team of people joining with skill to begin the training and then continue those trainings going forward. Similarly, if you travel any place in the world which has a developed surgical program, if you develop appendicitis, which is an infection of your appendix, which is a piece of your intestine that sits attached to your colon, if you develop that in any developed surgical place that has a developed surgical program, the treatment of that would be a laparoscopic removal of the appendix. We make a tiny little keyhole incision near your belly button, insert a special instrument with a camera on it, and we can remove that appendix. What we did for almost 200 years or maybe beyond was we made a big cut in your abdomen on the right lower part of your abdomen and took the appendix out. And that works. That's a very good treatment. But this is better. Laparoscopic removal is better. Patients recover quicker, infection rates are reduced, and people get back to work in a shorter period of time after that form of therapy. And it is now the standard of practice. So when we began to treat appendicitis in Kyabirwa, we didn't say, oh, let's do the old-fashioned technique, which we know works and is cheaper, or in some places is the standard of care because it's cheaper because you don't need the equipment. We said, no, we must bring this up to the level of what represents quality care, and that's access to laparoscopic equipment. And we installed that. We trained the physicians there, and now that's the only way that the appendix is removed, which is the way it would be if you were in other parts of the world as well. So figuring out what is the right technology, how to use that technology, and most importantly, train people to use that technology effectively becomes central to this process.
That's excellent. Just hearing about all these upgrades that are happening in real time or as you acquire them, which brings me to the other question that I had. What is your current relationship between Mount Sinai? Do you say Mount Sinai or Mount Sinai?
Mount
Health
Sinai, Mount
Sinai
Sinai.
Health System and Kyabirwa, and also, and that said, also with the Ministry of Health. And what is that kind of relationship?
So the relationship, which is the one we hope to continue to forge as we build and maybe try to continue to scale this program, is partnerships. It's not, we'll do this for you. We're going to show you. It's about how to partner in a way that other people can continue to do the process so that we are partners, not equal partners, but partners that provide part of the service. The majority of everything that's going on is done by Ugandans. And if you go to our facility in Kyabirwa, you'll see that it is Ugandans taking care of Ugandans. There's not Mount Sinai surgeons going to do work down there for a couple of weeks or a month and coming back. It's Ugandan surgeons. And when they need that partnership, when they need help, we provide that relationship. We find an expert who has the skill to do so. Let's talk about an example of that, one that you would know about quite well. And that is the story of Professor Way. Professor Jerry Way is well described. And if you travel any place in the world that does endoscopy or colonoscopy and mention the name Jerry Way, everyone will know that name. This is a man who is the father of the field, who developed many of the techniques, ideas, and programs that are standard of practice here. And we are very grateful and fortunate to have him agree to dedicate his time and effort to the training and education of our Ugandan staff in the field of endoscopy and flexible colonoscopy. And why is that so important? Well, how do you get 60 years of experience and compact that in a form that can distribute it out to someone else? It becomes very complicated, and yet you don't want to lose that experience. And to accomplish this, this is where our high-speed internet comes in. So Dr. Way is able to log on and perform procedures together or partner for procedures together with the surgeons in Uganda, particularly with complex tasks, one of which I'm going to give you an example of because it is very powerful. And Dr. Way's experience is so great that if he can see the hands of the physician doing the colonoscopy or the endoscopy, if he can see their hands, if he can see the image from the camera at the end of the scope, and if he can see what's happening in the room, there's three separate images. If he could see all three of those things at once, he can control that operation from 7,000 miles away. He just 60 years of experience allows him with these three images. So we provide him with a screen where he has one screen that shows the room, another screen that shows the hands, and a third screen that shows the video image from the camera at the end of the endoscope. With these three images, he can control everything happening in that room with his mouth. And that allows it to happen 7,000 miles away. Let me give you a powerful example. One night in Kyabirwa, it's a little over 2 years ago this occurred, a small child of 4 years of age was brought in the middle of the night who had swallowed a coin, a Ugandan coin, and had swallowed that coin almost 3 days previously. The child hasn't been able to eat or drink for 3 days. The coin is lodged in the middle of his food tube on its way down to the stomach. It wasn't big enough for the coin to pass, so the coin is now stuck in the middle of the tube, slowly eroding into the wall of the food tube inside of this young child's body. Now, this is just one child, and if this is not treated and removed, he will die. There's no alternative here. The child will die, and one will say, well, it's just one child, but it's one life, one important life. And this child was brought in, and the surgeons in Uganda attempted to remove this coin. And they passed the scope down, grabbed the coin, and tried to pull it out and couldn't get it out. They tried multiple times without success. They then got Dr. Way on the phone. Said, Dr. Way, we've been trying for several hours to do this without success. We don't know what to do at this point. The child could not survive an operation, nor did they have the skill to open up the child's chest, find the food tube, and remove this out of it. So either we found a way to get this coin out or we accepted the child's death. They get Dr. Way on the phone. Dr. Way says, let me see what you're doing. He puts up his screen so he can see everything that's happening in the room. They tried to remove the coin again. Again, the coin just doesn't come out. So Dr. Way says, take the scope out, take that scope out, and instead place in a thicker colonoscope that's used for a completely different purpose. Place the colonoscope in, because the colonoscope, I know from 60 years of experience, that the colonoscope will widen the space and give you more force to grab onto that coin and remove it. So they said, but that doesn't make any sense. No one does that. I said, trust me, follow my instructions. So they take the scope, as Dr. Way describes, pass it down inside this young child's throat, get to the coin, grab the coin, pull it out, and saved his life.
Wow.
It's only one life, 7,000 miles away, 60 years of experience impacted on the saving of that child's life. And more importantly, as importantly, the knowledge is transferred from one person to another using technology to integrate it. Those surgeons now know how to get out a coin, and people come from all over the country to have their coins taken out by the Tribera team because they have the knowledge and the experience to do so. So instead of me doing it or Dr. Way going and doing the procedure and nothing learned, he's now transferred the fundamental knowledge on how to do these things so that they stay in country and they begin to provide the services. It's a very important and very dramatic case, and it's very representative of how the program works.
What a powerful, powerful story. And I'm actually planning to go visit the facility in a couple weeks or so. And I cannot wait to see what's happening on the ground. But just even from the testimonial or for the story that you've just shared, this is so powerful. And I think it shows the importance of finding interventions that are sustainable, that can utilize or technology. And throughout your conversation, you've talked about the evolvement of technology, but it doesn't mean that some old techniques cannot apply in certain cases, and what we've seen here. And so the merging of this information and knowledge for both old techniques, the new techniques, and finding the middle ground to make to really provide a service. I think that's what I'm hearing is very critical. And the partnerships, obviously, and I'm excited as a Ugandan diaspora, Uganda is my birthplace. I'm excited that there is a facility like this that can provide services like this, the one of its kind in the country, if not the only one. So just even from that alone, I just want to say thank you so, so much for that vision, for that service, for that. It's a gift to the country. And I don't know if there's anything regarding the process that we haven't talked about. If there is, I'd like to invite you to just share with us, part of that journey of establishing this and getting staff, personnel at the surgical center. What was that like? What was your, and how does this all fit in the main healthcare system of the Ministry of Health?
It's a very important point, because one of the things people commonly say to me is, how did you get this to work? Where did you find physicians? Where did you find administrators? Where did you find nurses? Where did you find cleaning personnel? As if these people don't exist in a country like Uganda, that they don't have an education system there and a training system, that there aren't people as bright, if not brighter, and as brilliant and capable as you'll find any place in the world. And that's exactly what happened. When I needed a good surgeon or a series of surgeons, they were there. And they were there to learn and train and become even more skilled. When I needed an administrative person who could do human relations, do hiring and firing, doing finance, doing purchasing, there were people with master's degree in business who had tremendous knowledge. And the woman you'll meet when you visit there,
Anna.
Miss Anna, is
Yes.
the one of the most capable people I've ever met in my life. She says, and these people exist in every country and certainly exist in Uganda. And you don't need to import people and import knowledge. It's right there. What we need is to create an infrastructure by which these people can use their knowledge, implement it, and make it have an impact on the lives of others. And as you'll see when you visit this facility, you won't find any bald American walking around there. You'll find Ugandans taking care of Ugandans. And that's the key, the most important key to the sustainability and the success of this program.
Right. And then what was the process like in getting the certification that was required to operate, a health hospital in the country?
So when we began that process, we immediately engaged the Minister of Health locally and the Minister of Health in the National Minister of Health in Kampala. And in the process of doing that, we discussed what we want to do, and we took their direction on what they require in terms of to be a certified facility in that country, and made sure we complied with all the local regulations and laws. We kept them in the loop as we did our building and structure. We took many visits from them as we did it, and they came, and they were not obstructive, but they were supportive. They were supportive of the process. And the Minister of Health from Kampala has come to visit the facility and see it firsthand for herself, and now wants to bring the president. This is out of my hands. This is all about Ms. Anna and her operational program there. But there have been leaders from all over the country, particularly from the central government, who've come to see the facility, certified it, and gave it its stamp of approval. And it happened because we acknowledged the requirements of the local community and added to that those things that would make us able to provide the quality services that we felt were so central to success.
Absolutely. Thank you again for everything. I can't thank you enough. As you can tell, I'm very, very grateful.
No,
The
I
deep-
feel very grateful and honored to be part of a project like this. And what you'll see here is it isn't about one person. It isn't about it's about a group of people working together and extracting knowledge from many people. You've already met Dr. Way, so you know what I'm talking about. His ability to teach, to train, his altruism to give. But it's not lending knowledge, it's sharing knowledge. Sharing knowledge in a permanent way is a lot different than lending knowledge and lending capabilities. We want this place to sustain itself long after the thought leaders that helped conceptualize the beginnings of this are out of the picture. It has to have that sustainability.
So if, for example, we wanted to scale something like this to another region in the country, what would we do? Is there that possibility that we could work with Mount Sinai?
Absolutely, and we're looking at a number of other areas. We've done some trial views of regions up in Gulu. We've looked at a number of other areas that we're considering because they now have the knowledge, we have the connections, which is important, the relationships that we've built with people there, so we know how to construct things. I would say I would do some things differently. I would make some architectural changes because you learn from doing one, the next one will be different. So yes, we're doing that now. We're working on the finances to provide those kinds of changes that we're looking at doing. And yes, there's an opportunity to scale this and to unite these two enterprises, three enterprises, and those that are necessary to create an even more powerful clinical tool which can do surgery, but also research tool and a training and educational tool, which are all central to our mission.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Marin. It's been an honor to host you on Healthcare Blind Spots to talk about your work and experience. Thanks for everything that you do for Uganda and for the world in surgical care. Thank you again.
And I thank you for giving me the opportunity to tell you a little bit about the program and being as supportive as you have been with it. I thank you again.
Yeah, I look forward to bringing you back for more about your projects.
I would be delighted to do so, and I'm very excited to hear about your visit to Kyabirwa and what you find as being special about it because I think it's exceptional people and an exceptional place.
Yeah, I look forward to giving you that update. And to our viewers, thank you for watching. Till next time.
Thank you again.